and welcome to our second episode of the Azimuth Podcast. I am Kimberly McNabb.
And I'm Barrett McNabb, and today we're going to be discussing the recent espionage arrest of two U.S. Navy sailors, the downgrade of U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA+, and the first of our reoccurring 2024 presidential candidate profiles.
So in this first segment, we've got a serious topic to unpack. The United States Department of Justice has recently arrested two U.S. Navy sailors on national security charges related to China. The incident raises significant concerns about the security of sensitive information within the U.S. military.
Right, Kimberly. The sailors, Jinko Wei, as also known as Patrick Wei, and Wenjiang Zhao, who also goes by the name of Thomas Zhao, stand accused of providing classified information to Chinese intelligence officers. So let's break down what we know so far.
Wei, who is actively serving on the USS Essex, an amphibious assault ship stationed at the Naval Base San Diego, allegedly shared classified information, such as photos and videos of the Essex, disclosed the locations of Navy ships, and described the ship's defensive weaponry, as well as directly handing over physical technical manuals. In exchange, he reportedly received thousands of dollars from a Chinese intelligence officer.
Well, it seems like this is a plot straight out of a spy novel, especially given our last week's podcast episode where we specifically discussed security clearances and the handling of classified material. But these are real allegations, and they're part of a growing concern about China's efforts to infiltrate the U.S. military and gather intelligence.
Right. The second sailor, Zhao, worked at the Naval Base Ventura County in California and held a U.S. security clearance. He is accused of secretly recording and transmitting U.S. military information, including photographs, videos, and detailed blueprints of a radar system on a military base in Okinawa, Japan.
That's a serious breach of national security. We should also note that the Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson, during a recent press briefing, stated that China is unrivaled in the audacity and the range of its malign efforts to subvert our laws.
Yes. These cases are a stark reminder that the balance between openness in a democratic society and the need for national security can be precarious. We must remember that these accusations are not against Asians in general, but against these specific individuals allegedly involved in espionage and the Chinese government.
Absolutely. And to add to that, the Pentagon spokesperson, Brigadier General Patrick Ryder, has reassured the public that the military has clear policies and procedures in place to protect sensitive information. Violations of these rules, he says, will be addressed appropriately.
Well, that's reassuring to hear, Barrett. These cases underscore the ongoing challenges that the U.S. faces in ensuring the integrity and security of its armed forces in an increasingly complex geopolitical environment.
Yes, Kimberly, and it's essential to remember that our national security isn't just about military strength, but also the integrity of the information systems and the trust we place in those who have access to the sensitive data.
Now, Barrett, you have literally been all over the world. Have you ever run into foreign intelligence officers?
It seems if you run into enough people, foreign intelligence officers will eventually find you. When I was stationed in Korea with as my first duty assignment, I was single second lieutenant, and I started dating a Russian bartender that was in one of the establishments surrounding Camp Casey. And nice girl, and as we got to know each other, she would ask, kind of innocent questions like, so what do you do? And I said I was a second lieutenant in the infantry, and she wanted to know increasingly more interesting questions. It finally culminated when, with a straight face, she asked me, how many inches of rolled homogeneous steel can the Javelin anti-tank missile penetrate? And I was like, what an amazingly specific question from such a small little girl. And so I kind of dodged the answer, and I immediately reported the incident to my chain of command, who informed CID, the Criminal Investigation Division, which is the Army's investigative unit for crimes. And they did not invite me to. I thought I was going to be able to be a little James Bond at the time, but they did not invite me to participate and run the the person while they were investigating. So they just said, we got it from here, Lieutenant. And so I said, roger that, and moved on out.
Man, was she a honeypot?
Yeah, it's truly the old honeypot classic, and there's lots of ways that foreign intelligence officers try and get you to subvert you and to get you to betray your country. Effectively, what they're asking of you is to commit treason, and it's whether or not you are caught in an uncompromising situation. So if you're married and you fall for a honeypot, they can take pictures of recording and say, look, it's illegal to commit adultery in the Army, and so give us access to a bunch of information, or you're going to go to jail. We'll release this stuff out to your chain of command. So it's a classic trap. Others are include money. That's why it's so important. In our previous episode, we talked about in your background check, having a lot of debt can preclude you from receiving a security clearance.
Didn't a congressman from California lose his intelligence committee assignment due to his cozying up to a female Chinese spy?
Yeah, that's correct. Representative Eric Swalwell, who's a Democrat from California, spent time with a woman who was trying to get close to California politicians that whom the Chinese government deemed as up and coming. He supposedly ended the relationship after being informed by the FBI of her intentions, but it just goes to show anyone's a target. So exactly. Another instance, I was assigned to UAE, the U.S. Embassy in United Arab Emirates, and to help out the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, on collection of information on a specific exhibit called IDEX, and it's hosted every 2 years, I think, in the UAE, and it stands for the International Defense Exhibition and Conference. I wasn't credentialed for covert collection, but I was tasked by the DIA representatives for overt collection. And then over the multi-day event, sometimes I wore a suit and tie, and sometimes I wore my uniform, whether it was dress blues or whether it was Class Bs at the time. But it was just an absolutely awesome experience. And if you could imagine the bizarre scene from Lord of War, where there's tanks and guns and ammunition and fighter jets, all in a hangar, and there's all of these attractive women that are draped all over the tanks, and everybody's kind of drooling over all this military equipment. It was kind of like that. Very much so like that. However, it was definitely clean. It was not in some grimy hangar. It was, it's a clean exhibition center, and everything's well lit. All the girls they're not wearing bikinis. They're wearing little black dresses and things like that. But there's the tanks. There's fighter jets. There all the major small arms manufacturers there: Heckler and Koch, HK, FN, Beretta, Barrett, Smith and Wesson, you name it. It's kind of like the closest thing I can say is that it's like SHOT Show in Las Vegas. And SHOT Show is where all the firearms manufacturers get together and show off all their new small arms, and there's camping equipment, there's knives and things like that, body armor and stuff. But it doesn't compare to IDEX. IDEX is literally, it's as if every single nation on Earth and every single company inside those nations went and took the entire 1980s catalog of G.I. Joe action figurines and vehicles and said, let's do our interpretation on all this stuff. It's absolutely crazy. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, where I'm going to have some photographs that are going to be sliding by to show you some of all the unique equipment, but for an Army military person, it's definitely Candyland. But each nation kind of has their own booth set up, and the Chinese booth setup was kind of arrayed in a kind of a snowflake pattern. So it had a central office that was closed off to the public that had doors, and it had these arms that would go out kind of like a snowflake. And so there's different sections of the snowflake set up for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, missile defense, things like that. And so I was going around, and again I was tasked with overt collection. So I was in my military uniform, and I had a small point and shoot camera, and I was taking pictures of the Chinese equipment. And again, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, some of those photographs are flashing across the screen now. But as I got to some of the missile defense and their integrated systems, there was a Chinese intelligence officer that burst out of the central office. He was behind closed doors, and that was in the middle of that snowflake system for the booth. And this is a very large booth, so there's probably 4 or 5 people could be in that booth. Anyway, he burst out of the booth, and he had a camera with a big telephoto lens, and I swear he took at least 200 photographs of me. I mean, just in rapid succession. He's ducking, he's going side to side, it's almost as if he was trying to get a 3D map of my face, from various angles, so they could stitch it together. I mean, with that telephoto lens, he was looking into my pores. I mean, I don't know if he was trying to get a retinal scan and actually get the imprint of my eye or not, but I mean, he wasn't but 20 feet away with this giant telephoto lens. So anyway, I had my little crappy point and shoot digital camera, and I just picked it up and went click, and he lost his shit. I mean, he was so upset that he had a photograph taken of him that he got really irate, absolutely irate.
How dare you after 200?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was, I mean, I couldn't believe the scene that he was making. Anyway, he came up to me and he was aggressive, and it looked like he was trying to take my camera, and I let him know I was
like, you first.
Yeah, I straight up let him know, hey, look, that's not going to happen. I'm a combat veteran, and I definitely know that whatever you're going to do, I'm going to do 10 times back. So there's nothing can be done. But he didn't make a big enough scene. When I went back and I looked at the photograph was all blurry. I didn't get a good shot. So he was upset, and I got a really blurry shot. However, when security came to address his temper tantrum, and it was talking to him, I got a clear shot. And so I took another photograph, and I got the actual photograph. And so the joke was on him, because I was retired soon after that, so there's zero use of collecting on me. But I was able to take his photograph and turn it into the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, and that's the military's version of the CIA. So that's the military's alphabet agency that handles foreign assets and things like that, similar to the CIA, but focused mostly on the military. But it was just an amazing opportunity to get that, and so those are. I've had other interactions, but we'll save those for other episodes.
Well, I'm sure everyone's looking forward to hearing those stories.
Yeah, so that wraps it up for the first segment of episode 2. Stay tuned after these messages, and we'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all of the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. Welcome back to our second segment. Now we are going to discuss the recent credit downgrade of the United States by Fitch. I'm Kimberly McNabb.
And I'm Barrett McNabb. Again, today we're diving into a hot topic that's been buzzing around the news lately, the U.S. credit rating downgrade by Fitch Ratings. Kimberly, why is this important, and why should our listeners care?
Great question. In simple terms, a credit rating is like a financial report card for a country. When the rating drops, It may mean that some experts think that the U.S. is not managing its finances as well as it should. It is like going from an A to a B in school, or
That's
like a 750 to a 650 credit score.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So what's the background? Why did Fitch downgrade the U.S. credit rating?
According to Fitch, it boils down to three main issues: the big mountain of debt, political fighting, and uncertainty about how the government will manage money in the future.
But didn't the Secretary of the Treasurer say Fitch was looking at old data, and it was based on, the majority of his decision was based on the events that happened on January 6th?
Yes, but Fitch sat down with CNN and flatly stated there wasn't even a small consideration in their downgrade decision.
Okay, so let's break those down. So starting with the debt, it's like having a big credit card bill, right?
Exactly. Imagine you owe more on your credit cards than you make in a year. That's kind of what's happening with the U.S. right now. The debt is 113% of the entire economy's output, and that is worrying for some.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big number. What about the political infighting?
It's like a family that can't agree on how to spend money. If mommy and daddy are always fighting about finances, it's hard to make wise decisions. That is what's happening in Washington, with the two main parties having very different ideas about spending and taxes.
And that's what brings us to the third issue, right? How the government will manage money in the future.
Yes, with all this fighting, Fitch is concerned that the U.S. might not make the tough choices needed to fix long-term problems like Social Security and health care.
So those are the reasons. Now, what are the potential negative consequences?
This is where it gets really hard for everyday people. Imagine if your personal credit card score dropped. You might have to pay more in interest when you are borrowing money. The same thing can happen to a country. This downgrade might make it more expensive for the U.S. to borrow money.
And that means what?
Higher interest rates on things like mortgages and car loans. Even a small increase can add up over time.
Plus, it might shake the confidence in the U.S. dollar overseas, right?
Absolutely. If people around the world start to doubt the dollar, it could lead to other challenges, like higher prices on imported goods.
It's a complex topic, but I hope we've made it a little bit easier to understand. This just isn't a doomsday scenario, right, Kimberly?
No, but it should be a wake-up call. It shows that financial experts are concerned about how the U.S. is managing its finances, and it is something we should all be paying attention to.
Absolutely. Of course, there's second and third order effects to this downgrade. There's a growing list of countries, namely China, that would love to see the U.S. dollar replaced as the global reserve currency. Now, we are not an international finance channel. That's not what the purpose of our podcast is. But I just wanted to give you a little context here. So the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, or SWIFT, you've heard that in the news lately, is its full name, is an organization that oversees the world's leading international payment messaging system. Now, while SWIFT does not directly handle clearing and settling procedures itself, it is responsible for delivering messages on how payments should be given and received, and it's used by 11,000 financial institutions globally. A SWIFT ban on Russian banks essentially prevents them from conducting cross-border transactions unless they wish to communicate through clunky email or a telegram. Now, our downgrade, coupled with the United States removing countries from SWIFT banking system like Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, encourages Chinese competitor banking system called the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System, or CIPS, to gain prominence. The Chinese CIPS handled more than $12 trillion in financial communication back in 2021. And, the United States really became a world economic power post-World War II, mainly by utilizing the Marshall Plan for Europe and loaning and granting monies to countries. We spent lots of our capital. Now, the advantage that the United States had in World War II was that none of our manufacturing capabilities were damaged. European manufacturing was really kind of crushed, and so it was really a dark time for Europe, and it allowed the United States really kind of to step up and be that world manufacturer. But now China is the second largest economy in the world, and we've been borrowing so much money for domestic programs that I just don't see the feasibility of continuing to borrow money and increasing the national debt even more, just to go and give it away to other nations. If we do, our credit rating could take another hit. The Chinese have implemented their Belt and Road Initiative, and it is a system where China goes into developing countries and says, look, you need a bridge from here to here, or you need an upgraded airport, or you need an upgraded seaport. We're more than willing to loan you the money, and in exchange, you sign away rights if you don't pay your bill. And so China loans the country the money. Part of the stipulation is that Chinese companies and workers have to be utilized in order to do the project. So China loans them the money, but then Chinese companies, which are controlled by the Chinese government, get the money back effectively. And if a country down the road does default, then China says, look, you owe us. We can station military troops there. And so they're really going around the world in order to get these long-term leases set up through mineral rights, but also this Belt and Road Initiative to have people look at and invest in their country, but then they put themselves at risk.
Well, I would also imagine that those countries, in any sort of dispute between China and the U.S., that country would side more with China, like, hey, they helped us with all this infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. It really does. As countries have loyalty, they have long-term friendships, but honestly, every nation is always going to be looking out for its own best interest.
As it should.
As it should. And so we've given money through the State Department. We've given money through USAID. We've given money through Peace Corps. But it often boils down to thanks, but what have you done for me lately? World War II is coming up on 80 years ago, and that was awesome that you saved the world and you helped our country, financially rebuild after that. But what have you done for me lately? And oftentimes the U.S. money comes with human rights restrictions and human rights requirements. So, the Chinese money does not. And so if you had a country that, was giving country A money, and then the United States was also giving country A money, and we said, hey, look, you have to have all these human rights initiatives that have to be implemented.
And change their way of life.
And change their way of life and not necessarily have American values, right? Or you could take the Chinese money that comes without all those restrictions. There are countries that obviously are going to take the money without these restrictions. Well, the U.S. could fall from the largest economy in the future, and really by 2050, it's looking like the United States will be the third largest economy in the world. Now, Kimberly, what seems to be going to be the number one and number two?
China and India. Now, let's think about that for a second. A worker who is just 25 right now will be only a few short years from retirement when that happens. The rising national debt could invite even more credit downgrades and create a death spiral.
Yeah. Goldman Sachs coined an investment strategy surrounding emerging markets, providing high yields, called the BRIC. And BRIC stands for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. They later added South Africa to add an S and make it BRICS. But I tell you what, I have a new theory and a new term that I've coined of a new block of countries that'll form and add to a credit system not constrained by Western values, and I call it the dark BRICS, made up of Belarus, Russia, Iran, China, and Saudi Arabia. And I see this block as the beginning to a paradigm shift in the world order, and we'll do deeper dives on that in future episodes. But that concludes our second segment. Please stay tuned for the third segment after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. Welcome back to our third segment. This is where we dive deep into the political pool, breaking down the 2024 presidential race.
That's right, Kimberly. Today we're going to introduce you to all the candidates running for the top spot. We have a mixed bag of potential future presidents from the Republican, Democrat, and third-party camps. So let's kick off with the Republicans.
First up, we have 12 candidates that are actively running right now, including Donald Trump, who is the former president, Nikki Haley, former South Carolina governor and former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Vivek Ramaswamy, a biotech entrepreneur, Asa Hutchinson, the former governor of Arkansas, Larry Elder, a political commentator and talk show host, Tim Scott, a sitting senator from South Carolina, Ron DeSantis, the current governor of Florida, Mike Pence, the former vice president and former governor of Indiana, Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, Doug Burgum, the current governor of North Dakota, Francis Suarez, the current mayor of Miami, Florida, and Will Hurd, former Texas congressman from Texas and a former CIA officer.
Over on the Democrat side, we've got Joe Biden, the incumbent president, Marianne Williamson, a writer and a speaker, and finally Robert F. Kennedy, an environmental lawyer.
But let's not forget the third-party candidates, who always add an interesting dynamic to the race. They include Colonel West running as the Green Party candidate. However, the no-name party is causing quite a stir as they continue to apply for a ballot consideration in more and more states. They have not named a candidate as of yet, but rumors abound, including the Democrat senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin. It is going to be quite the race, Barrett. Over the next few weeks, we will be diving deeper into each of these candidates, their platforms, and how they plan to tackle the issues that matter most to voters.
Absolutely, Kimberly. We've randomized the candidates prior to the episode this week, and we're going to be discussing Nikki Haley, taking a deep dive into her life, her political career. She is the former governor of South Carolina and the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Nikki Haley was born in 1972 in Bamberg, South Carolina. From an early age, she learned from her Indian American parents about the blessings of living in America and the importance of celebrating similarities rather than differences.
A real outsider, yet Haley embarked on a political career that would make her a prominent figure in American politics. In 2004, she won a seat in the South Carolina State House against a 30-year incumbent. And what's impressive is her record during her tenure. She challenged the established order, pushing for tax cuts and legislative transparency. Despite significant opposition, including attempts to sideline her career, she persevered and in 2010 was elected governor of South Carolina.
Absolutely, and she wasn't just any governor. She became the youngest sitting governor in the United States and the country's first female governor of Indian descent. Her tenure was marked by economic growth, reforms, and unity during times of crisis.
Known as the Beast of the Southeast, South Carolina saw significant economic advancements under her administration. The unemployment rate reached a 15-year low, with over $20 billion in new capital investment announced.
And let's not forget her focus on accountability. She passed laws to ensure politicians' votes were on record and created an ethics commission to investigate misconduct. This transparency led to a massive shift in South Carolina politics.
Yes, and she was an ardent pro-life advocate, signing important pieces of legislation like the Born Alive Infant Protection Act and the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Haley's aggressive stance on illegal immigration, requiring law enforcement to check people's immigration status, faced substantial opposition and legal battles.
Haley's educational policies deserve a mention, too. She signed a bill to expand charter schools, scraped the federal government's Common Core standards, and focused on improving education for the state's poorest students.
Plus, she was a vocal defender of the Second Amendment and worked to protect veterans, easing their transition into civilian life, helping them find employment. A personal mission given by her husband, Michael, who is a combat veteran.
Haley's leadership was truly tested during times of crisis, such as the Mother Emanuel Church shooting in Charleston, Hurricane Matthew, and others. But she rose to the occasion each time, offering leadership, compassion, and unity.
Post-governorship, she served as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations under President Trump, where she continued to make her mark.
Indeed, Haley was instrumental in pushing through major reforms at the UN, defending Israel, getting tough on countries like China and Russia, and advocating for human rights.
Her actions during her time as UN ambassador even led Time magazine to name her one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2016, a testament to her significant impact on global politics.
Now, Nikki Haley has her sights on the presidency, vying for the 2024 Republican nomination. This new journey, in a way, is a culmination of her political career, and it will be interesting to see how her campaign unfolds.
Absolutely, Kimberly. Nikki Haley's story is a reminder that individuals can rise above their circumstances, being the only Indian American family in a small town, to make an impact in the world of politics. Her presidential bid will be one to watch closely. So let's take a look at her official video from her campaign website, NikkiHaley.com.
The railroad tracks divided the town by race. I was the proud daughter of Indian immigrants. Not black, not white. I was different. But my mom would always say, your job is not to focus on the differences, but the similarities. And my parents reminded me and my siblings every day how blessed we were to live in America. Some look at our past as evidence that America's founding principles are bad. They say the promise of freedom is just made up. Some think our ideas are not just wrong, but racist and evil. Nothing could be further from the truth. I have seen evil. In China, they commit genocide. In Iran, they murder their own people for challenging the government. And when a woman tells you about watching soldiers throw her baby into a fire, it puts things in perspective. Even on our worst day, we are blessed to live in America. I was born and raised in South Carolina, so I have seen the very best of our country. People here threw out the old, tired political establishment and demanded accountability for their tax dollars. Industry reports called us the beast of the Southeast, which I loved. People came by the thousands for fresh starts. Moms and dads held their heads up high. Children learned that it was always a great day in South Carolina. It's a great day.
It's a great day.
A great day. A great day in South Carolina. We were strong. We were proud. And when evil did come,
Police in South Carolina are looking for a gunman following a shooting at a church in
Several
downtown
victims.
Charleston.
We don't know the severity.
we turned away from fear, toward God, and the values that still make our country the freest and greatest in the world. We must turn in that direction again. Republicans have lost the popular vote in 7 out of the last 8 presidential elections. That has to change. Joe Biden's record is abysmal, but that shouldn't come as a surprise. The Washington establishment has failed us over and over and over again. It's time for a new generation of leadership to rediscover fiscal responsibility, secure our border, and strengthen our country, our pride, and our purpose. Some people look at America and see vulnerability. The socialist left sees an opportunity to rewrite history. China and Russia are on the march. They all think we can be bullied, kicked around, You should know this about me. I don't put up with bullies. And when you kick back, it hurts them more if you're wearing heels. I'm Nikki Haley, and I'm running for president.
Wow. That was pretty good. I mean, it shows who she is, where she came from, what she's done, what she wants to do. What are your thoughts on the video?
I really enjoyed it. I also looked at her merchandise section of her website, and in reference to what Don Lemon said about her, she has stickers saying "In My Prime."
Yeah, and I think she even has a coffee mug as well that says "In My Prime" as well, which obviously that's pretty funny. So let's go over some strengths and weaknesses as we see it for Governor Haley. Kimberly, do you have any strengths that you see?
Well, first I'd like to mention she also has a degree in accounting.
Okay.
She also has a very diverse background as an Indian American woman. Haley represents a degree of diversity not often seen within the Republican Party. This could help broaden her appeal to a wider audience. Although I'd like to note that 6 of the 12 Republican candidates are people of color, whereas 100% of the Democrat candidates are white. As an executive experience, her tenure as the governor of South Carolina and U.S. ambassador to the United Nations provides her with both domestic and foreign policy experience. For her economic record, as a governor, she presided over significant economic growth in South Carolina, which could resonate with voters looking for a strong economic steward.
Yeah, I also see her as a unifying figure. Haley has often presented herself as that figure that everybody can rally behind. She received national acclaim for her handling of the aftermath of the Charleston church shooting in 2015, which was absolutely just a tragic event, and her particular decision to remove a Confederate flag from the State House grounds. I also see, she's got bipartisan appeal. During being a Republican, Haley's been able to command respect from some within the Democratic Party, mainly due to her moderate positions on some issues, but potentially helping her appeal to independent voters. What do you see any weaknesses, Kimberly?
So one, she has Trump-era ties. Haley's service under President Trump as UN ambassador could be seen as a liability amongst voters who disapprove of his administration. Her relationship with Trump has been complicated. She has both supported and criticized him publicly, which might confuse or alienate some voters. For her political base, she might face difficulty in galvanizing the Republican base due to her more moderate stance on certain issues. And then, as her immigration policies, her tough stance on immigration while governor could alienate some Hispanic and immigrant voters.
Those are fair points. Another thing, I think she has limited national exposure. A lot of people don't know who she is unless you're a news junkie like myself and really get into the United Nations. She has held, obviously, high-profile positions, but she's not as nationally recognized as some of the other rivals for the nomination. Also, her economic record is super strong. I mean, there's no doubt about that. She did not really significantly, improve a lot of the education policies. Opposing Common Core, she didn't improve the education, and unfortunately, it kind of does rank near the bottom in the United States as far as national education numbers.
So stay tuned, do your research, and remember, your vote counts.
Absolutely, Kimberly. We encourage our listeners to engage with us on social media. Let us know what questions you have for these candidates, what issues matter to you. And we're here to make sense of the race, but we're also here to give you, the listeners, a voice. We want to definitely engage with you in the comments.
And with that, this concludes the final segment of our second Azimuth podcast episode. We are so glad to have you expand the conversation to each and every single one of you, and we hope to build a relationship, learn, and grow together as we seek to ensure our country stays on the right path. We're planning on releasing full episodes on Mondays with the individual segments released throughout the week on all your favorite podcast platforms. Take care.
Yeah, and see you next week.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.